What's up, guys? I'm Abby Martin, and this is Breaking the Set. So, remember how the government initially justified the Afghanistan war? Well, they said it was an act of retaliation for 9/11. You know, to find bin Laden, take out those training camps, and find them terrorists. Well, of course, the war has lasted more than 12 years, marking it the longest in U.S. history. And no, it isn't over just because most of the troops on the ground have left. See, there are still tens of thousands of military contractors on the ground. And there's been absolutely zero victory. In fact, the U.S. military ended up attempting to negotiate with the very same enemy it vehemently tried to annihilate that entire time. But wouldn't you know it, seems Afghans don't like having puppet dictators chosen for them by the U.S. government. Because now, an interesting figure with strong ties to the alleged mastermind behind 9/11 is running for president. That's right, Abdul Rasul Sayyaf is a former Islamist warlord and was named by the 9/11 Commission report as the mentor of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. Well, 12 years later, I guess we can finally say, mission accomplished. Do you ever get the feeling that arguments you hear on TV are mostly baseless? Well, oftentimes the certainty we hear from pundits and politicians alike is really just a smokescreen for a lack of a logical argument. Here's an example.
Remember, there were 2 government shutdowns in the month before Ronald Reagan ran for president in 1984, and he won by a landslide. The American people fear Obamacare. It's more unpopular now than ever before.
Well, that was Michelle Bachmann engaging what's known as a fallacious argument. Notice how she's nonsensically stringing together a bunch of random events, all to assert her position on Obamacare. And while someone like Michelle Bachmann might be an easy one to call out for lacking logic, fallacies come in many forms. In fact, we're all guilty of committing these unreasonable arguments on a daily basis. So how can we better understand logical fallacies and work to combat them every day? Well, earlier I was joined by Matt Berkowitz, coordinator with the Zeitgeist Movement and lecturer of logical fallacies. I first asked him what the most commonly used fallacies are today.
3 prominent ones, I guess I'd say, is one is called the association fallacy, where we hear we hear an idea and we tend to, of course, make sense of it with what we have come to understand already. So if someone is criticizing, for example, the free market system, it's a natural tendency to just go ahead and label that communism or socialism, because, of course, anything that's not for the capitalist system must be one of those 2 things. So that's an association fallacy. And then there's, of course, the straw man fallacy, which we encounter a lot. It's when, again, they don't understand what idea you're putting forth. So, again, they try to misrepresent it to make it easier to attack. And I guess another really common one would be called the argument from ignorance. You see this a lot come up a lot in religious debate, but also in social discussions. We tend to inject our own preferential explanations into perceived gaps of knowledge. So we don't understand why someone behaved the way they did. It must be because of human nature. It must be because of their genes. We haven't really studied the reason for why this behavior is manifested in the way it had, but we just like to have an answer for it. So we just plug in whatever answer sounds best to us without actually looking at the data.
Right, and then you have the ad hominem, which is just outright insults, changing the goalpost, which is switching the subject of the argument so then it's easier to win, and sweeping generalizations, of course. You know, it seems like these fallacies are often so obvious when you deconstruct them. Why do so many people continue to commit them? I
think it's largely because of the value system that's dominant in our society today. We tend to live in we do live in an established system where institutions and individuals themselves try to perpetuate themselves, try to preserve themselves. One way we do this is by attaching ourselves to different ideologies, different emotional comforts, like religion, and such that when these ideologies are challenged, when these beliefs are challenged, it becomes very painful to consider that you're wrong.
Well, they certainly don't like to be called out on their logical fallacies. I know that. Is this all just a failure in the education system?
I think in part, but I think the education system is really just a result of the economic system. And since the economic system is predicated on institutions perpetuating themselves, this trickles into the education system. So, I mean, I know for one, I went through a whole university degree. The topic of logical fallacies never came up at all. Maybe I didn't take the right courses, but I mean, it's just simply not taught in the education system very well.
Right. And, you know, you're talking about how you've dealt with logical fallacies in terms of the zeitgeist movement and kind of debunking the debunkers, specifically in dealing with social and advocating for social change. How has this tool helped you to analyze that?
Well, on the communication end for myself, I suppose it's just allowed me to not get too emotional about discussing these ideas. If someone gets angry at me, I just remind myself, okay, well, they're just a victim of, or they're a result of whatever upbringing they've been subjected to. And you know, if people don't want to hear the information, there's really not much you can do. You just move on to the next person. But in terms of actually applying the understanding that people make these logical fallacies, simply just try to counter them at the beginning. So, you know, you preface your explanation by saying, okay, what we're proposing has nothing to do with this, this, and this, and those are the main fallacies that they make. So you just try to overcome them and I guess anticipate them wherever possible, I guess is the short answer.
And I guess what's the danger of not recognizing these logical fallacies from the media, politicians, and really amidst each other in society?
One of them is division. I mean, if you're vulnerable to, for example, the association fallacy, where everything that's not right wing is left wing, then it really artificially limits your frame of reference. So you start to, you analyze problems within a much smaller box rather than actually seeing a much larger picture. So by not recognizing these fallacies, you're doing a disservice to yourself and everyone around you by not really taking the whole picture into account.
And Matt, are there any tools that you can give people in general to use in deciphering fallacious arguments being used against them?
Just review whatever topic that you're studying is and become familiar with the most often used ones. Once you read up on the many different logical fallacies there are out there, and the more you become comfortable with it, you'll start to see them everywhere, across the media and the education system and political discourse, pretty much everywhere.
Well, we need to start combating them, calling them out, so we can really move forward with intellectual discourse, because it's severely lacking in society. Thank you so much, Matt Berkowitz, coordinator and lecturer of the Zeitgeist Movement.
Thanks so much, Abby.
Guys, every day I ask you to visit my social networks and let me know what you think about the show. So today I'm going to give you some feedback on your comments. Starting with YouTube, Severed321 responds to my segment calling out Representative Peter King for Islamophobia in the wake of the Al-Shabaab mob shooting. He said, quote, "The label Islamophobia is just a tool used to discredit anyone that criticizes Islam as a racist/bigot, etc., even though the studies show the vast majority of moderate Muslims support suicide bombings and other forms of jihad." Wow, man, where are all these scholarly studies you speak of that prove that a majority of moderate Muslims support murder? Oh, wait, they don't exist. And guess what? You're Islamophobic for saying that. Moving on to another YouTube comment by Styles Bitchley, who says, "Was there ever an apology for that whole clitoris debacle, or even acknowledgement of the negative uproar it caused?" Nope. Absolutely not. Why would I apologize for a segment that I'm proud of doing? Sorry that speaking about female sexuality and empowerment might have rattled a few cages, but I think addressing societal taboos is imperative. You know, if everyone in society felt comfortable talking about these things, maybe the world would be much happier. Moving on to Facebook, Michael Richmond says, "Not that I don't appreciate the constant whistleblowing I see on my Facebook feed from your program, but have you ever reported on a positive story?" Michael, thank you for appreciating the news that I provide. But if by positive you mean firefighters saving kittens, no, not regularly. But I think it's very positive to highlight the grassroots journalists, activists, and overall badasses that are working every day to change all the terrible problems plaguing this planet and that I feature on this show. I also constantly ask guests, what can we do to fix these problems? And I provide the tools for the audience of ways to make a difference. That being said, I do want to cover strictly positive stories, and I'm working on a new segment that will be ready to air shortly, so stay tuned. And another awesome Facebook comment about my clitoris segment is from Samuel Strings, who says, "I'm so sick of women these days. Get over yourselves. You're not that effing important nor necessary. My hand and imagination is quite factually and literally just as good as any woman has ever been." Wow, Samuel, the ladies that you encounter while holed up in your mother's basement must love you. And lastly, from YouTube, Jaron Sperriman says, "Great show, Abby, on literally every show and every segment I've ever done. Look, man, I don't know who you are, but you're awesome, and that's hilarious." So thanks to everyone, even the trolls, for writing and all your feedback. Love and support. And still ahead, guys, I'll talk to Jesse Ventura about his new book, They Killed Our President. Don't miss it. Not many people can cross over from being a combat veteran to a Hollywood actor to the governor of a state unless, of course, you're Jesse Ventura. After leaving the world of professional wrestling, Ventura ran for mayor and then governor of Minnesota as an independent candidate, proving that defeating the two-party monopoly is possible. And since leaving politics, he's hosted his own TV show called Conspiracy Theory with Jesse Ventura, and he's now a best-selling author. His new book is called They Killed Our President, 63 Reasons to Believe There Was a Conspiracy to Assassinate JFK. Well, he joined me earlier to break it all down. I want to get your take on this shutdown. Taxpayers elect Congress, they pay their salaries. Congress seems to have no disagreement on bombing countries and spying, and they know that they have a 10% approval rating. So how is it that they have the gall to hold Americans hostage indefinitely?
I'll tell you, it's beyond my comprehension. I don't know how. You know, these congressmen and senators, they shut the government down because they don't want us to have health care for everybody. Yet they themselves have 4 different plans they can each choose from for their health care. And is it not provided by the government? So isn't it government-run health care? The hypocrisy is astounding to me.
It is indeed, especially the GOP, you know, cutting food stamps yet receiving millions of dollars of subsidies for their farms. Let's talk about your new book. You're promoting it called They Killed Our President, 63 Reasons to Believe There Was a Conspiracy to Assassinate JFK. Thank you so much for sending me this. I can't wait to read it. And the book outlines 63 reasons to believe this was a conspiracy. Can you elaborate on what you found to be the most compelling reason of all?
Oh, there's so many compelling reasons of the 63 that, well, I'll give you a few things. One thing the Warren Commission lied about, Jack Ruby and Lee Harvey Oswald knew each other very well. Jack Ruby had stated that he knew Lee Oswald since he was a kid. Now imagine that there changed the whole assassination, because the Warren Commission told us, oh, there's no connection. Jack Ruby killed him because he didn't want Jackie to face a horrible trial. Like we're all supposed to buy into that. And remember this, the only quote that Jackie Kennedy ever said about this, she said, "They killed my husband." They. She didn't say he killed my husband. She was plural. And then, you know, there's so many, like, you've got the Katzenbach memo, which I lead the book off with because I felt that was so important. Mainstream media has never even shown it to the public. Nicholas Katzenbach was the acting attorney general Monday morning. Naturally, Bobby had lost his brother. He wasn't coming into work on Monday. So he was the acting attorney general. This is a memo from him to Lyndon Johnson, the new president. And he explains how in the memo, we have to make the public know that Oswald acted alone, that he had no partners who are still out there, conspirators who acted with him, and that he would have been convicted had there been a trial. All of this laid out in a memo. If that's not a smoking gun to the government's cover-up. See, 2 cover-ups took place, 2 conspiracies. There was the actual conspiracy to shoot JFK and murder him, and then there was the conspiracy afterwards to cover it up.
And you know, it's so unfortunate that so much evidence has been destroyed, yet there are so many unanswered questions. I mean, how much is available that's more than just circumstantial?
Oh, there's still a lot. They're still withholding tons of evidence. Do you know what you can't get today? You cannot get Lee Harvey Oswald's tax return. Now, someone might say, why is that important? First of all, you'd say, well, why can't you get it? 50 years, that can't be national security. I'll tell you why it's important. If we could get Lee Harvey Oswald's tax return, that would leave a paper trail to who was paying him. And that paper trail would lead right back to our own government, because Lee Harvey Oswald was a low-level government agent.
Well, we know that
in fact, he was involved when he went to the Soviet Union. It's already been proven he was involved in what they called a false defector program that the United States government was running at that time, getting young guys to allegedly defect to the Soviet Union.
Jesse, a majority of Americans believe this. They believe that JFK was assassinated by a conspiracy. And also, a majority of people have questions about 9/11 also. Knowing this, how does it feel to go on shows like Piers Morgan and other shows on the mainstream media and to be ridiculed and painted as a lunatic for bringing up these issues?
Well, because we'll show you in the book that that was the CIA's mission to anyone that questioned it. That's how they do. They try to marginalize you. They try to make it seem like you're a conspiracy nut. That's where the mainstream media comes in, because they are also culpable in this deal. Because, excuse me, many times you hear, well, someone would have talked. Many people have talked. It's simply mainstream media won't report that they did. I'll give you an example. I have an audio, visual, and written confession from E. Howard Hunt from Watergate of the CIA. He did a deathbed confession to his son, St. John Hunt. We've got it all on tape. We aired it on my TV show. It should have been headlines across America. E. Howard Hunt admits he was part of JFK conspiracy to kill him. It didn't receive one word of mainstream media coverage, not a word that E. Howard Hunt had confessed to an outside participation. He even named who did it. You know, Cord Meyer of the CIA, Morales, who was, and I forget the other guy who was the head of the CIA's assassination team and all that. And where do we get off having CIA assassination teams? At what point in time did our country allow premeditated first-degree murder of someone without an arrest, a trial, and a conviction?
Seems like commonplace now, Jesse. You've also said, speaking of the CIA, that there are CIA operatives working in every state government. First of all, how do you know this, and what are they doing there?
Well, I don't know what they're doing there. How do I know this? Because as governor, I was introduced to the person.
Wow.
And they wear two hats. They work at a high level of government, but they don't come and go with governors or anything. They're there all the time. They do one job for the state, and they wear a second hat as a Central Intelligence agent. And what troubles me about that is, in the CIA's mission statement, it states they're not to be operational inside the United States. That's the FBI's job.
You know, speaking of extrajudicial assassination, I wanted to get your opinion on this, Jesse. Renowned journalist Seymour Hersh just came out saying that the bin Laden narrative is a big lie. Do you agree that we've been lied to about what happened to bin Laden?
I have a lot of questions, because he had a disease that had him on what are those machines?
Dialysis machine, yeah.
Dialysis, yeah, thank you. It's been a long days. He was on dialysis machine. How could this guy be wandering around the hills of Afghanistan with a dialysis machine and we can't find him?
For 10 years.
Come on. Well, let's look at the whole 9/11 conspiracy for a moment. Here's what the government told us, that 19 Islamic radicals armed with box cutters defeated our multi-billion-dollar air defense system, all while conspiring with a bearded guy in a cave in Afghanistan.
You know, I just find it shocking that the American people don't demand evidence or any sort of closure about this event, that they've, you know, Obama campaigned on it, the death of bin Laden, killing this guy, no trial, nothing at all. Just really bizarre, Jesse. And as a former Navy SEAL, do you find it weird that SEAL Team 6, a group that embodies this extrajudicial assassination, has been glorified in the mainstream?
No, I'm upset that people even know about the SEAL Team, because back when I was in the Navy, they weren't even hardly known to the public. Now they've turned them into the Green Berets. Movies about them, this about them, that about them. It was much better in the old days, where we simply wore green uniforms with jump wings and wore no other insignias at all to indicate who we were. And SEAL Team 6 was the highly secretive one. In fact, my good friend Dick Marcinko is the creator of SEAL Team 6. He writes all the Rogue Warrior books. And Dick's the one that created SEAL Team 6, the anti-terrorist unit. And I've had personal friends that have served in SEAL Team 6. They weren't even known. They wouldn't even acknowledge SEAL Team 6 existed. And now today, they're like every day, everyone knows it, everyone wants to be one, and Hollywood wants to exploit them.
Jimmy Carter, who said that the U.S. has one of the worst election processes in the world, pretty strong words from a former president. Governor, you've called for paper ballots to replace voting machines, but my thing is that, you know, we have the technology. Shouldn't we be able to use the technology that exists today? The problem is when the machines are owned by Mitt Romney or Bush or Obama or whoever else. I mean, really, what is the root of the issue here?
Well, here's the problem, and I'll disagree with you. We don't want these electronic voting machines because they can be hacked into like any other computer. Let me put it to you in a real easy sense. Would you go to a cash machine that didn't offer you a receipt?
No.
An ATM machine. Would you go to an ATM machine that didn't offer you a receipt? No. Well, why would you vote on a voting machine? You have no way of knowing. When, say you vote for Barack Obama and you push the button on Barack Obama, you have no way of knowing if Barack Obama, if that vote was registered to him. It could go to his opponent. And there's no way to have a recount, because all those machines do is they give you a number like an adding machine. 1,200 votes for this guy, 1,300 votes for this guy. Some things are better left old. How about paper ballots where you simply fill in the circle? My point is, you've been doing that since first grade. When you took tests in school, fill in A, B, C, or D. If a person isn't capable of doing that, they shouldn't be voting in the first place.
Good point. I mean, we've seen just extraordinary hacking into already over the past few years with these machines. And you've also said the Electoral College should be abolished. I couldn't agree more. That's an antiquated system. It needs to be completely removed. But we're almost out of time, and I wanted to bring this up, Jesse. You recently floated the idea of a Ventura Howard Stern 2016 presidential ticket. Can we get this confirmed right now? You have the floor. You can make the announcement right here.
Well, it takes Howard. I won't do it without Howard. And there's a method to my madness. I need Howard Stern. Number one, I despise raising the money. It's bribery. It's legal bribery, what our system is. And you know, you bribe the candidate. You give them money. That's how you get you know, if you do that in the private sector, you go to jail. But we have an entire political system based upon bribery. Well, my deal is Howard can raise the money. Then I don't even have to pay attention to the money. I'll do the governing, let Howard raise the money. And also, when I ran for governor of Minnesota, I had a statewide talk radio show. When I filed to run, I lost my job. I had to go 6 months unemployed because the FCC won't let you. Howard Stern is not with the FCC, he's with Sirius Radio. We can use his radio show to be our platform to the United States of America, and it would cost us zero in money. I find it obscene. My father once said to me when I was 16, a World War II vet, he said, you know, all politicians are crooks. I said, come on, Dad, you can't make a blanket statement like that. How do you know that? He said, easy. He said they pay $1 million for a job that only pays 100 grand.
Oh,
think about that a moment.
Very smart man.
No one in the private sector would ever pay more money for a job than what they're going to earn. That's the status quo, except for Jesse Ventura. When I ran for governor of Minnesota, I only raised $300,000, and I made $480,000 my 4 years in office, $120,000 a year. So I actually made more money doing the job than what I spent to get it. So if my father would have been still alive, he could say, my son is not a crook.
Everyone, you heard him. Everyone needs to get Howard Stern on board. Thank you so much. Jesse, the Body Ventura, awesome to have you on. They Killed Our President. Everyone check out the new book, 63 Reasons to Believe There Was a Conspiracy. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. Hope you all have a great night. We'll see you right back here to break the set again tomorrow.